Hare Krishna. Today is August 27th, 2021. We're reading for Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 14, entitled The Three Modes of Material Nature, text 26. Text 26. Mam cha ya avyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sa gunan samatitya etan brahmabhuyaya kalpate mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahmabhuyaya kalpate mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahmabhuyaya kalpate mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahmabhuyaya kalpate. Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahmabhuyaya kalpate.
Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahmabhuyaya kalpate.
Okay, we'll go to the word for word. Mam, unto me, cha, also, ya, person, avyabhicharena, without fail, bhakti yogena, by devotional service, sevate, renders service, sa, he, gunan, all the modes of material nature, samatitya, transcending, etan, all this, brahmabhuyaya, to be elevated on the Brahman platform. Kalpate, is considered. Translation: one who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. This verse is a reply to Arjuna's third question. What is the means of attaining to the transcendental position? As explained before, the material world is acting under the spell of the modes of material nature. One should not be disturbed by the activities of the modes of nature. Instead of putting his consciousness into such activities, he may transfer his consciousness to Krishna activities. Krishna activities are known as Bhakti Yoga, always acting for Krishna. This includes not only Krishna, but his different plenary expansions such as Ram and Narayan. He has innumerable expansions. One who is engaged in the service of any of the forms of Krishna or of his plenary expansions is considered to be transcendentally situated. One should also note that all the forms of Krishna are fully transcendental blissful, full of knowledge, and eternal. Such personalities of Godhead are omnipotent and omniscient, and they possess all transcendental qualities. So if one engages himself in the service of Krishna or his plenary expansions with unfailing determination, although these modes of material nature are very difficult to overcome, he can overcome them easily. This is already explained in the 7th chapter. One who surrenders unto Krishna at once surmounts the influence of the modes of material nature. To be in Krishna consciousness or in devotional service means to acquire the equality of Krishna. The Lord says that his nature is eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge, and the living entities are part and parcel of the Supreme, as gold particles are part of a gold mine. Thus, the living entity's spiritual position is as good as gold, as good as Krishna in quality. The difference of individuality continues. Otherwise, there is no question of Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga means that the Lord is there, the devotee is there, and the activity of exchange of love between the Lord and the devotee is there. Therefore, the individuality of two persons is present in the supreme personality of Godhead and the individual person. Otherwise, there is no meaning to Bhakti Yoga. If one is not situated in the same transcendental position with the Lord, one cannot serve the Supreme Lord. To be a personal assistant to a king, one must acquire the qualifications. Thus, the qualification is to become Brahman, or freed from all material contamination. It is said in the Vedic literature, Brahmaiva san Brahma Peti. One can attain the Supreme Brahman by becoming Brahman. This means that one must qualitatively become one with Brahman. By attainment of Brahman, one does not lose his eternal Brahman identity as individual soul. Om Gana Timirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Upakadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Nascha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaragnatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Buddhan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanditam Scha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vishabhano Sate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatayubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Bhagavad Gita chapter 14 text 26 Mam Chayo Vyabhicharena Bhakti Yogena Sevate Sagunan Samati Jaitan Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Okay, so much here in the purport. So one thing is that Prabhupada writes, to be in Krishna consciousness or in devotional service means to acquire the equality of Krishna. Okay, so I can be the same as Krishna. Actually, just before we came into the program here, Vishnu and I, we were honoring solid prasadam, and Vishnu was reminding me, because I think he's seen me on recordings or videos, he reminded me of my story in the San Diego seminar, 2002. I was a participant, and we were down on the floor doing some cathartic process, and so the staff came to me because they kind of had a sense of my orientation from my neck beads and the fact that I was chanting japa all the time. And so the staff came to me and they said, and they were trying to care about me the way they knew how. And they said, David, just know that you are Krishna. And they were certain that I'd be like ecstatic. I was like, oh, that's kind of not what I needed to hear right now. But that's kind of what they like from their conception. Like, what else could possibly be the goal, right? Because like, yeah, like we're not, we understand you, David. You're like us. You're not some materialist just going after material enjoyment and like that. Your spiritual life means you realize you're God. And we understand for you, Krishna is a name for God. So they were just encouraging me. They're encouraging me. And we can say, well, Prabhupada's supporting that here. To be in Krishna consciousness or in devotional service means to acquire the equality of Krishna. So this is where it's important to make distinctions, So, of course, Maya tattvam idam sarvam jagadabhyaktamurtina matstani sarvabhutani nacham teshvavastita. But in a sense, we are Krishna in the same way that the sun rays are the sun, and the sun rays, they are light and they are illuminating, just like the spirit soul is conscious and consciousness. With the coaching client today, it was a fabulous session. Not that I did fabulously, but the coaching client was asking me, so is the soul conscious or is the soul consciousness? And according to my understanding from Srila Prabhupada, the answer is both. It's a wonderful philosophical question for any time, certainly during this coaching session, but it was very relevant to a personal process. So my understanding from Srila Prabhupada, actually right in the purport of chapter 2, Prabhupada makes it clear. We, as spirit soul, that we're conscious and we're made of consciousness. Both are true. Just as a sun ray, a photon of light, it's illuminating and it's light. It's made of light and it's illuminating. So, and it spreads warmth and light, just like the sun. So the sun rays are the sun in a sense, and in a sense, well, no, the sun rays are not the sun globe. There's quantitative difference, other differences too. So, so Prabhupada and Krishna are making the point. This is all 700 verses of Bhagavad Gita are transcendentally enlivening. And some verses Prabhupada, as our current link to the Parampara, emphasizes. These are like especially important verses, and this is one of them. This is one of the foundational verses of Bhagavad Gita for us. And Prabhupada saying, well, so it's all one in a sense, and there's three. So there's the yes, that there's the devotee, and there's the sevak, the seva, and there's the servant. So there's the servant, there's the served, and there's the service, the seva, and all one in a sense of transcend. So that's what it means to become qualitatively equal to Krishna, to realize our nature as Brahman. So there are places in the Vedas where it says things like tattvam asi, you are that, you are Brahman. So we say, so there it is. That, but so Bhagavad Gita, we get distinctions. We get distinctions. Natvevaham jatuna samnatvam name janadipana chetana bhavishama sarvevayam atakparam. Never was there a time when you did not exist, nor I, nor all these kings on the battlefield, nor in the future shall any of us ever cease to be. So we're eternally spiritual persons. And so it's so those who say, David, just know that you are Krishna, or the Mayavadis, the impersonalists, at least conceptually, with maybe whatever realization they have, which could be more realization than I have, certainly, but they do make an important distinction. Yeah, we're not the body, we're matter. We're not matter, we're the spirit soul. That's an important distinction. Okay, then another distinction is, and we're not the supreme person. We are an eternal person. We're not the supreme consciousness. We are Nicho Nichanam, Nicho Nichanam, Chaitanas Chaitananam. Right? So just like the Vedas might say, yes, you are Brahman. You are Brahman. And Brahman means the great. So as a metaphor, just like, let's say if we're at the beach, let's say we're at the beach. And so you might point to the ocean, Atlantic Ocean or Pacific Ocean, whether we're in California or Florida, but we would not be in Oklahoma. No beaches in Oklahoma, right? Yeah, Vishnu's nodding his head, he's in agreement. So we point to the ocean and we go, that's the ocean. That's the ocean. Okay, now actually what I'm pointing at and what I see and what you see, it's maybe, I don't know, what's it like, what's the radius we can see, the horizon, like it's maybe 10 miles, 20 miles. But we know the actual Atlantic Ocean, it's like 6,000 miles wide and 4,000 miles depth, and it goes down and tens of thousands of feet down. So we're just seeing like a little surface for a few miles. Still, it's accurate to say, oh, that's the ocean. That's the ocean, to give us an idea. So similarly, the Vedas will sometimes point at us and go, you are Brahman. Because, well, it's true. We're like a sliver of the ocean, right? But it doesn't mean that we are the 15,000 miles of coast, from the tip of South America to Nova Scotia, and all from the Americas to Africa, and so yeah, we are Brahman, and we're like a sliver of Brahman. We're a particle. We're a particle. And so this, of course, is the Achintya Beta Tattva philosophy. This is the ultimate conclusion of the Vedas. We're simultaneously one with Krishna and different. All energies are one with Krishna and different. And so by studying Krishna's energies, Yad Yad Vibhuti Mat Sattvam Srimad Orjitam Evava, Tad Vibhav Bhagacha Tvam Ekam Senusto Jagat. So Krishna says, know that all beautiful, mighty, and glorious creations spring from but a spark of my splendor. And then Ataveda Ateva Bhanaitena Kim Gatena Tavarjuna Vista Vyamidam Krishna Mamatesham Sasambhavan. And Krishna says, but what need is there for all this knowledge? If we get to know the goal of all knowledge, Vedeshta Savera Hameva Vedu, Vedantakrit Veda Vede Vachaham. Krishna is the goal of all the Vedas. He's the compiler of them. If we're really knowing Krishna, then we don't need to study the details because we've achieved the goal. And it's very helpful to study the details. And just like this chapter is called the 3 modes of material nature. It's called the 3 modes of material nature. And at the beginning of the chapter, Krishna and Srila Prabhupada and the Prabhupada, they go, this is the most important chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. We say, how is this the most important chapter? They say, this is the superior knowledge. Krishna's already spoken about devotional service in chapter 12, the goal of yoga, chapter 6, the most confidential knowledge in chapter 9. We might say that, like on a ladder, if we're climbing a ladder, what's the most important rung of the ladder? And we could say the top rung, maybe, or we can say the most important rung is right where I'm placing my hand right now. So this modes of nature helps us to see, here's where I am. Here's where I am. Just like if I have a map and I want to, if I want to go somewhere, we can say the destination is the most important, but it's vital to know, where am I now? So Prabhupada and Krishna said, this is the most modes of nature. How am I entangled in the mode of nature? This is essential to understand. So much of what we do in Sattva Tov is around how are we attached to the modes of nature as a platform, not just for psychobabble analysis, but as a platform to liberate ourselves, to get unattached. And so, so this verse, it's about the modes of nature, and it's about transcendence. And so they're both important. They're both important. To cultivate sattva gun, dharmic living, virtuous living, and not to make it the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is the full 100% pure devotional service to Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then you might say that the risks, the dangers, if we, in the name of going for transcendence, are we doing some spiritual bypass? Are we doing some spiritual bypass? That, oh, I chant my rounds, I study Bhagavad Gita, I wear neck beads. So that means, as this verse says, one who's engaged in devotional service at once according to this verse, I'm transcendental to the modes of material nature. That means I am like the personification. I'm like the embodiment of all the sattvic qualities. Empathy and tolerance and patience and compassion and virtue. That's what it says. But if we read it closely, it doesn't really say that. Because if we read it closely, one who engages in full devotional service, operative term there, full, who does not fall down in any circumstance. I fall down like 500 times a day. And even where I'm falling from is not a particularly high place, but that's lack of humility. Oh no, I chant my rounds, this and that. So it's a philosophical truth. One who is truly, fully engaged, steadily, nishta, is fully engaged in devotional service. One who's fully engaged in devotional service is transcendental to the modes of nature and naturally does possess all the qualities of sattva, all the qualities of the demigods, to quote Bhagavatam. Yasyasti bhakti bhagavat yakinchana sarvaya gunais tatrasa masate sura harava bhakti sakuto mahaguna mano ratanasati davato bahi. So that's a philosophical truth. To think that that particular philosophical principle applies to me in my current state is probably a mistake. It's surely a mistake. It's surely a mistake. And so more humble and grounded is to see the texts, the verses that describe the conditioned living entity enmeshed in the modes of rajas and tamas and layers of illusion and self-deception. I was going to say, okay, that's describing me where I'm at now. And so part of my process of bhakti yoga is not to say, oh, I'm transcendental, I don't need to practice the goodness stuff. I got that. I got that down. No, part of my process of bhakti, is to consciously cultivate sattvic qualities, compassion, tolerance, patience, cleanliness, virtue, truthfulness. My word is my bond, sattvic qualities. As a platform, you're all familiar with the airport example, as a platform for launching into transit, not to make sattva the goal. It's not to do a spiritual bypass. And that's why earlier today, Vishnu and I, we were also speaking. You had a quick talk. You said like something like let's say someone, let's say someone is okay. There's different perspectives. So let's say someone who's really a realized impersonalist. We talked today. We had a morning program. Also, Kram Prabhu was here, part of the morning program. So we talked today about like personalities like Prakshananda Saraswati and the 60,000 sannyas disciples, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, kind of before he got his transformation, like that. Okay, let's say like someone who's really practicing an impersonal path. And then let's compare a person to like just like a new bhakta or bhaktin with like a very non-Vedic cultural background, we might say non-cultural. I saw back 40 years ago or so, I remember I saw the movie Gandhi, and there was an interview and someone asked Gandhi, I think he was visiting America, Europe or something, maybe South Africa. They asked Gandhi, what do you think, Gandhi, of American culture? And he said, that would be a good idea. Okay, we need a drum roll there. Okay, so let's say a new bhakti or bhaktin like that, and maybe whatever we can imagine, like, but they're on the transcendental path, right? They're on the transcendental path, and maybe like they're chanting. Maybe some days they don't chant their own. Maybe sometimes they sneak out and smoke cigarettes. Maybe some days they sneak out and smoke some other things. But they're reading Bhagavad, they're reading Prabhupada's book, Science of Self-Realization, and they go to the deity and they're like, wow, the deities, and like they know this is their path. And maybe compared to someone who has like a very dharmic, virtuous Vedic background, who's schooled maybe either in conventional impersonalism, maybe a new age impersonalism, but they've really got clean habits. They've really got clean habits, and they're like 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times more austere than that new bhakta or bhaktin, right? Who's beginning to practice devotional service like that. So who's better? Who's more advanced? Better is a judgmental term. So it depends kind of like through which angle of the crystal we look at it, right? Because in one sense, the substantially realized impersonalist, they might actually be acting on a platform where they have realization they're not the body, more than the new bhakta or bhaktin, who is like maybe controlled by the senses in so many ways. And and so they're higher in the modes. They're higher in the mode. Their consciousness is higher. At the same time, such persons might be really averse to devotional service. Maybe even if they chant some Vedic mantras, their goal is to become Krishna, right? To realize the Brahma. And such a mentality. See, for a devotee, even a gross materialist is better than that. See, it can seem contradictory, but for a devotee, even to suffer in hell, Narayana Prasarvena Tukashchan Vidyati Svargabhavaram Narikesh Papitoyata Darshana. That's why Lord Shiva tells his consort Parvati, look, devotees blissful in heaven or hell, doesn't matter for a devotee. Because a devotee just wants to serve. And from that position in the Brahma Jyoti, that's hellish for a devotee. It's more hellish than the hellish planets described in the 5th canto. Because from the Brahma Jyoti, there's no possibility to serve. From the hellish planets, there's plenty of possibility to serve. But in Brahma Jyoti, there's that there's no conception of two. There's no possibility of loving devotional service. And so that's a very hard-hearted position. Of course, we understand that there are some, relatively few, but there are some realized Brahmajyoti impersonalists who are not hard-hearted, against devotional service. And then they come to devotional service. Srila Shukadeva Goswami, the 4 Kumaras, like that. and Atmaramas Chamunaya, Nirgvanti Apyu Krami Kravanti to Kim Bhakti Vitam Bhuta Gunohar. So this is like these examples, the four Kumaras, Shukadeva Goswami, these are proof, these are evidence of the all-encompassing, I'll say, superior nature of bhakti, of loving devotional service, because these are realized impersonalists with no material desire. So how come they're reading about the gopis? How come they're reading about Krishna stealing butter? It's proof that these are not material activities. These are not material activities, gopis and Krishna dancing. Because Shukadeva Goswami has no interest in soap opera or romantic drama or material sporting activities. So the same with the four Kumars, they have no interest in anything material. And then they're completely transformed by getting a whiff of the fragrance of the tulasi flowers offered to the lotus feet of Vishnu, which says that this is, so fragrant smell means material. No, this is spiritual smell with the gopis and Krishna, spiritual dancing. It's spiritual sporting activities with the cowherd boys and Krishna. So from that point of view, from a mechanical point of view of who's higher in the modes of nature, we might get the impersonalist who does some realization, but the struggling new bhakta or bhaktin who's offering obeisances to Srila Prabhupada and offering incense, and even though they're struggling with their senses, maybe more than the Sattvagun Prakshananda Sarasvati sannyasi disciples. Of course, they were special sannyasi disciples. Their hearts got changed too by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. He was a pretty powerful preacher. Of course, I'm making an understatement there. So because they're connected with devotional transcendence, from Krishna's point of view, they're much more evolved. They're much more evolved. Now, of course, if we are in that category, I'm struggling with my senses, but I'm trying to serve under Prabhupada's direction, right? So then it's very important that we do establish a foundation of sattva, of dharma, of virtue as like a safety net, so that if we're not, as this verse says, we're not completely in that position where we do not fall down in any circumstance, that if, well, I do fall down, so that where we're falling down to is not too deep in the pit, that there's some sattvic safety net, that we're not going deep into the tamas and rajas that we were swimming in before we came to Krishna consciousness. So cultivating sattva is important, and making transcendental devotional service the ultimate goal is equally important. They go side by side, they're not contradictory. Sometimes Prabhupada equates sattva and transcendental devotion. Sometimes he makes distinctions and sometimes he equates them. And so it means that it's like it's described in the Bhagavatam, Vasudevi Bhagavati, Bhakti Yoga Prujita Janiyat Yashivayagam Gyanam Chayada Hetukam. That by performing devotional service, one automatically acquires knowledge and detachment from matter by performing devotional service to Vasudeva Sri Krishna, the all-pervading person. What a concept. A person, like, oh, I'm a person, here I am. So Vasudeva Krishna is a person that exists in fullness everywhere. Anantarasta, Paramanu Chantarasta, in every atom. Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Videsha Arjuna Tishtati, in the heart of every living entity, including sitting right next to you and me in our heart. And so even though by performing devotional service, knowledge comes automatically, it's part of our bhakti yoga to study Prabhupada's books. Not to do it, well, if we study Prabhupada's books with any mentality, it's purifying. But the idea is to do it with a mood of bhakti, not to do it with a mood of jnana separated from bhakti. So similarly, we endeavor as part of our process of bhakti to cultivate tolerance, not to assume that because I do some devotional activities, therefore I must be a tolerant, compassionate person. To notice Yeah, by Prabhupada's mercy, I got some connection with this most sublime transcendental process. And my heart is full of impatience and self-absorption and laziness and greed and lust and foolishness, etc., etc., etc. So it's part of my process to notice, yes, there's that propensity to become irritable over nothing, to become impatient over something petty. This is a great chance to practice the sattvic qualities of patience and tolerance, tolerate without being disturbed. And that's not my nature, because my nature is not sattvic. So I get to practice it until it more and more becomes my nature, and to practice it in a spirit to increase my devotion to Krishna, because the rajas and tamasa qualities, they're gonna distract and deviate me again and again from the real fulfillment and bliss of my life. So to practice cleanliness, to practice patience, to practice sattvic communication. It's a theme in sattva too. So sattvic, we use the term assertiveness. Essentially, it's sattvic communication is described in many places in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, chapter 17. So sattvic communication, it's the austerity of speech. Austerity means like, yeah, I need to focus, and just like to regularly get up at 4 a.m. That's an austerity. It's a very blissful austerity. But by the time 9 or 10 a.m. comes, I'm really glad I got up at 4 a.m. At 4 a.m., I'm not like jumping out of bed. Hare Krishna. It's a different thing there. So it's an austerity because I'm conditioned. So austerity of speech, sattvic speech. It means that what we speak is true. So that's an austerity, because like, well, this would be a good time for, this would be a comfortable, easy time for some deception, but I'm going to do the austerity and speak truth. And austerity of speech, sattvic speech, is also beneficial, because it also could also be easy. I'm just going to tell you the truth in your face, truth. See if you can take the truth in your face. Yeah, I'm just being honest. That's sattvic. I'm like a Brahmin. Just tell the truth. Well, not really. So, because sattvic austerity is also that I go deep in myself, give my 100% effort. I'm going to share the truth without compromise, in a way that's truly coming from a caring, compassionate place. And I'm truly, like, what I say might not be pleasant, but I'm not going to be obnoxious or arrogant. I'm coming from a place that's truly intended to be win-win, from a caring place. And that's an austerity, because it can be like, if we're only willing to do what's easy, life will be hard. If we're willing to do what's hard, life will be easy. So that takes effort to, like, because it could be, I just out of fear, I won't say anything. And that's okay. I'll speak the truth and speak in a way where it's really intended for someone's highest welfare. And that's really what's in my heart. And so, for conditioned souls like myself, that requires an effort. And the more effort we make, then it becomes more and more second nature. So we communicate, listening, speaking, all tolerance, patience, all the sattvic qualities. Okay, so this is chapter 14, text 26 of Bhagavad Gita. And the verse is Mam chayogya vicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samati jaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Just mentioned behind me, you can see the verse written on the board by our Bhakta Vishnu, along with the Devanagari script. Hare Krishna. Thanks for listening. I welcome if anyone wants to share any comments or realizations or ask any questions at this time. Vishnu.
Sri Ramanuja, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna.
Sri Ramanuja is something that there's a philosophy. It's like Maja.
I can't hear very well. Can you speak louder?
And the
Either
Sri
speak
Ramanuja-
louder or come closer. I'm going to ask you to be responsible that everyone on internet hears what you say, because what you have to say is important.
In the Sri Ramanuja Sampradaya, there's a philosophy like Marjala Kishora Nyaya, like a baby cat philosophy, like the mother will just carry the baby cat in its mouth, and the baby doesn't have to do anything. So this is sort of like Sharanagati, and they said in the purport, like, like you have to be on the same transcendental position of the Lord to serve the Lord. But then it's sort of like if you're in debt and you just go up to the debtor and you're like, oh, you just beg, you're like, oh, I have no money, and the debtor will just write it off. Was that like, and it's sort of just like, that's Sharanagati in a sense, is that right?
Okay. Okay, well, thanks for your question, comment. And I'm not much familiar with the Ramanujacharya Sampradaya philosophy. I other than what Prabhupada gives us. I did read a biography of Sri Ramanuja, written by Dhira Maharaj Das. It's really written for teenagers. It's a very good biography. And okay, so thank you, Vishnu. So we can. Can
you repeat the question if you don't mind?
Okay. All right. So Vishnu, he was citing a metaphor used in the Ramanuja Sampradaya. What was the Sanskrit for it?
Marjala Kishora Nyaya.
Marjala Kishora Nyaya. A metaphor from the Ramanuja Sampradaya, maybe directly from Ramanujacharya himself. And the idea is that the kitten in the mouth of the cat doesn't need to do anything. It's safe, it's sheltered, and it gets carried along. And the example given is like, if someone is a debtor, and you can go to the person you owe money to and just like, I don't have anything, please forgive my debt. And that's like, we have nothing to offer Krishna, but we just surrender, feeling, yeah, I have nothing to offer, but I'm surrendered. And so I'm hearing, Vishnu, you're asking, like, is that the correct understanding?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, again, so my link to the Parampara is Srila Prabhupada. So I can say my understanding based on Prabhupada's teachings. Based on Prabhupada's teachings, well, one thing, as you and I were discussing earlier today, just as the Buddha came for a particular purpose at a particular time, Jesus came for a particular purpose at a particular time. And Jesus gave bhakti, love of God. Philosophically, he didn't give the complete Bhagavatam, he didn't give the complete Achintya Veda Veda Tattva. Similarly with Shankaracharya had a particular purpose. So similarly, those four Vaishnava Acharyas leading up to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they all had a particular purpose, and they're pure devotees, and they didn't give the complete thing. So again, I don't know exactly the context of that metaphor in Ramanujacharya's teachings or his followers' teaching, but we can understand that, well, basically, like it's kind of like part of the truth, but it's not the complete truth. There's Sharanagati. Sharanagati means surrender, but surrender doesn't mean that we shirk our duty or our responsibility. As the saying goes, work like everything depends on us, and pray like everything depends on Krishna. So it sounds like that particular metaphor that you just used, it sounds like it could be a very useful, helpful metaphor, like for someone where like the consciousness is like Rajasic. I will surrender to Krishna. I'll do this, I'll do that service, and I'll do that service. So that metaphor can help someone go to, look, I'm puny and insignificant, and I'm arrogant, and like Srila Prabhupada on the Jaladuta in Boston Harbor, one of his poems, he wrote, I have no knowledge and I have no devotion. I mean, Prabhupada's truly feeling he has no knowledge and devotion. So I think he's showing that kitten-like mentality. At the same time, I wouldn't say that that's the complete picture. Because sure, Krishna's mercy, Krishna is the cat in this metaphor. Krishna's mercy is causeless, meaning it's not forced by the modes. It's not like a business deal. If I do this and Krishna has to do that, it's not like that. Krishna is not forced. The pure devotee is not forced. But at the same time, we can invite and attract Krishna's mercy by showing that I'm giving my 100% sincere effort to serve you and please you. And I know that like this doesn't force Ashli Shava Pradavadam Pinashtamam Darshanam Marmatam. But we can work like it, do our internal work, do our service with excellence. So the metaphor you gave, I mean, it has its use in devotion. It could also be misused to excuse laziness, complacency, and mediocrity in the name of I'm completely surrendered. So we want to be careful about that. So there's also the part that work like everything depends on us. Internal, honest introspection work, and in our external service, attention to detail, commitment to excellence, and at the same time cultivating humility that who am I to receive Krishna bliss? Like we were talking this morning, Haridas Thakur, the most qualified acharya of the holy name. And he was feeling like, oh, it's true. I am not qualified to enter the temple of Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra. So cultivating humility, but not artificial humility as an excuse to not give with full enthusiasm to Krishna's service. Hare Krishna. Malini.
I was listening to Vishnu saying, and I found it very beautiful. And I heard what you say, and it seems that this saying can be misinterpreted, and I agree. And that misinterpretation can lead to laziness and giving up things that doesn't need to be given up. But like, okay, that's misinterpretation. Like so many things Prabhupada in his book can be misinterpreted. So many of the teaching can be misinterpreted. But then if we take the teaching itself without the misinterpretation, my sense is that it is complete. Because to come to that place of feeling surrendered, to come to that place of feeling completely sheltered like a kitten in the mouth of the mama cat, to come to that place, we need our prescribed duties. We need our 16 rounds. We need everything else. It's not like this, all that. Is to come to that level of what Ramacharya is describing. Yes, that's all. We don't need anything else, because from that place, then the kitten is in the mouth of the mama cat, and then from that also he get to do everything the mama cat wants him to do, and his complete instrument, like Prabhupada was an instrument for the mission of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur from that perspective. But to come to that level of renunciation, surrender, and complete abandonment, we need everything we are doing, really. Because it's not simply, oh, I'm going to be like that, like the kitten. Well, it doesn't happen. I can tell myself that all day long. I'm not going to feel like a kitten without really working on it.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, so the the work, like everything depends on us, leads us to that kitten-like surrendered mentality. And so you're giving that part of it. Thank you, Melanie. That if a spirit soul is already in that kitten-like mentality, then it is complete, and they've done the work and they're doing the work. Thank you, Melanie. Atmananda.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Melanie. When you said someone can speculate or say all day long, I am transcendent. I think the term in the Bhagavatam is manoratena. They're riding on the chariot of the mind.
Yeah.
They think themselves transcendental. So yes, thank you. Dear Govinda, you chose the same sentence that I honed in on when you read the purport.
Yeah.
About acquire the equality of Krishna. I was actually going to ask if that was a mistake.
Okay.
I'm glad. I appreciate the way you expanded on it and making distinction. Yes, I mean, you didn't focus on this, that we are equal with Krishna, but we're also different. But Prabhupada makes a distinction, and I think you touched on it in the purport, that if there was no individuality, if there was no distinction, then there would be no question of bhakti.
Yeah. Right.
Relationship. Yeah. So that was one thing that came to my mind. And then the other point about the verse was that Prabhupada, Krishna doesn't say one who engages in full devotional service does not fall down.
Yeah.
He says who does not. So for me, that's like an and, comma, and who does not fall down. So
Yeah.
even if someone is fully engaged, doesn't necessarily mean they won't fall down. So there's both. And I think your focus on, and what Malini also mentioned, we need to have that platform of sattva as a stepping stone, and as you mentioned, a net, safety net.
Safety net. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that's essential, but
Yeah.
maybe it is. I think it's a good question. And then the other thing about Vishnu, thank you for your question, Vishnu. And dear Govinda, in response to Vishnu, you asked the question, who's more advanced, or dear to Krishna, the new Bhakta Bhaktin who has no sattvic cultural background, history, or the self-realized impersonalist,
Yeah.
who understands he's not the body, who's fixed up and largely, at least sattvagun, and is very apparently advanced. And then so I thought that was relevant, because often an impersonalist, Prabhupada describes them like this, generally they're averse to Krishna.
Yeah.
So who's more advanced? And I think that's maybe partly a point in response to Vishnu.
Yeah.
So there were several points. Thank you.
Thank you, Atmananda. Thanks for your comments and insights and sharing. Any other comments or questions?
If there is no comment, I have a comment. It's about something you said around the Jnani and the studying and all that. And recently I read Maitreya Rishi speaking with Vidura about that point. And there is verse after verse from Maitreya Rishi that really expand on that idea of why is it that Bhaktas read or study? And clearly it look like it's to learn, but Maitreya Rishi make it clear that it's not because we want to increase our knowledge. There is no point of trying to increase our knowledge of Krishna anyway, because we are not going to know Krishna anyway. We are going to know what Krishna wants to reveal to us, and that's it. And at the same time, the bhaktas, the devotees, they want to hear about the Lord constantly.
Yeah.
For the pleasure of it, and
Yeah.
for no reason. And so I was just taking on what you were saying about the Gyanis and learning, but it's not that we are not learning. And then, like Maitreya, she goes so deep into the distinction of the studying of the Gyanis and the studying of the Bhakta.
Thank you, Melanie. Thanks for that. Yeah, I can say that if I look at myself now, and if I look at myself over 40 years, that I have some drop of experience in that direction. I say it's 40 years. Actually, it's like, it's probably like about 41 years ago when I picked up my first Prabhupada book, right? And because I wanted to know, I wanted to find faults. I want to learn and like that. But more and more, I can say that I'm more and more enthusiastic to read Prabhupada's books each year of my life. Definitely true. And my motivation, my inspiration, it's less and less about like acquiring knowledge and understanding more points. Yeah, I want to control the knowledge. Thanks for that. Yes. Like, yeah, I want to accumulate cars or a bank account. So that's like the Gyani mentality is all, it's still material. I want to accumulate knowledge. So subtle platform accumulation. But more and more, like I'm reading because I'm relishing the association of these personalities, primarily of Srila Prabhupada. It's like it's about association. I'm associating with these persons personally, to whatever extent my heart's open to receive personal association. But I'm associating with Maitreya, Rishi, and Vidura, and Uddhava, and Narada, all through Srila Prabhupada. And more, that's my draw. That's my attraction about why I'm inspired to read. And in the process of that, I'm probably picking up more and more philosophical knowledge now than when I was reading years ago or decades ago, because I'm coming maybe from a bit of a more pure place rather than trying to accumulate knowledge. Thank you, Mom. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Hare Krishna.